The end of DEI is what we've been fighting for. This is the conversation I had with ChatGPT. I said, have you been trained on Black history? ChatGPT said, yes. I have been trained on Black history, including key events, figures, movements, and cultural contributions. I can discuss topics like the transatlantic slave trade, the civil rights movement, African kingdoms, Black inventors, the Harlem Renaissance, Pan-Africanism, and more. Is there something specific you're interested in? I said, great. ChatGPT said, awesome. What aspect of Black history are you curious about? Any specific event, person, or movement? Or do you just want to explore something new? I said, I want all the articles on Black leaders or people asking to be judged by their character and abilities, not by the color of their skin. This is what ChatGPT found. There are several notable Black leaders who have emphasized being judged by character and abilities rather than by race. And pay attention for who's not mentioned. One of the most famous quotes on this principle comes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said in his 1963 I Have a Dream speech, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. This idea has been echoed by many Black leaders throughout history. Here are some key figures who have spoken about merit, character, and personal responsibility. The original fight, equal opportunity, not handouts. Historically, Black leaders fought for equal opportunity, not preferential treatment. They wanted to remove barriers, not create new ones that artificially elevate one group over another. Booker T. Washington, 1856 to 1915, Self-Reliance over Victimhood, 1895. Washington, an influential educator and founder of Tuskegee University, believed in self-reliance, economic progress, and vocational training for Black Americans. In his 1895 Atlanta Compromise speech, he stated, "Character, not circumstances, makes the man." One of the greatest educators in Black history, believed in economic empowerment over political agitation. In his famous Atlanta Compromise speech, he said, "The wisest among my race understand that the agitation of questions of social equality is the extremest folly, and that progress in the enjoyment of all the privileges that will come to us must be the result of severe and constant struggle rather than of artificial forcing." He argued that success comes from building skills, economic strength, and character, not from demanding forced inclusion. If he were alive today, he would likely oppose DEI initiatives that push people into positions for optics rather than ability. He emphasized that Black Americans should demonstrate their value through hard work, skill, and education, rather than seeking social equality through protest. Frederick Douglass, 1818 to 1895, Leave Us Alone, 1865. A formerly enslaved man who became one of the most powerful abolitionists, Douglass believed in self-determination and individual capability. In 1865, he said, "What I ask for the Negro is not benevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simply justice. The American people have to learn that where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe." He argued that Black Americans should be given the same opportunities as everyone else to prove their worth. 1. He was saying, "Give us fair treatment under the law, and we'll take care of the rest." 2. He did not ask for racial quotas, special privileges, or policies like DEI. Thomas Sowell, born 1930, a prominent economist and author, Sowell has argued against racial preferences and affirmative action, advocating instead for personal responsibility and economic self-sufficiency. He has said, The most fundamental fact about the idea of equality is that it can never be fully achieved, only approximated. What we can strive for is equality of opportunity, not equality of results. Soul believes that people should be judged by their skills and contributions rather than their racial identity. Clarence Thomas, born 1948 as a Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas has consistently opposed racial quotas and affirmative action, believing they undermine meritocracy. He has said, "I have never understood why it is that people pick me apart because I refuse to have race dictate what I think or who I am." Thomas has argued that individuals should be recognized based on their abilities, not race-based policies. Colin Powell, 1937 to 2021. The first black U.S. Secretary of State, Powell, was a strong advocate for leadership based on character. He once stated, "We must understand that no one is entitled to anything. We all have to work for what we get. The great equalizer is not the color of your skin but the content of your character and your ability to perform." Powell believed that success comes from competence, leadership, and dedication. How we got DEI, a shift away from equal opportunity. During the Civil Rights Movement, leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. argued for a colorblind society based on character and merit. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., A Society Based on Character, 1963. King's most famous words from his "I Have a Dream" speech. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character." The goal of the civil rights movement was to remove race as a barrier, not to create race-based policies in the future. Affirmative action was introduced as a temporary measure to help overcome the legacy of racism, but over time, it expanded into racial preferences instead of just equal opportunity. The transition to DEI, 1990s present. By the late 20th and early 21st century, the focus shifted from equal opportunity to equity, meaning equality of outcome, not just opportunity. DEI policies started prioritizing race over merit in hiring, college admissions, and promotions. Instead of creating a level playing field, it tilted the field in favor of certain racial groups, the exact opposite of what black leaders like Douglas Washington and King wanted. The rollback of DEI, a return to the original fight. Now that DEI programs are being removed, some people are angry, but ironically, this is what black leaders originally wanted. Racism is not dead, but it is on life support, kept alive by politicians, race hustlers, and people who get a sense of superiority by denouncing others as racists. Thomas Sowell, economist, 1980s present, has long criticized affirmative action and DEI, saying, Sowell argues that DEI encourages victim mentality and removes accountability, making black people dependent on racial preferences. "I have never understood why it is that people pick me apart because I refuse to have race dictate what I think or who I am." Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, has consistently ruled against affirmative action, believing it undermines the hard work of black Americans. He believes black Americans don't need racial crutches, they need equal opportunities and personal responsibility. Malcolm X, self-reliance over dependency. Malcolm X was one of the most powerful voices for black empowerment, and while he was critical of racial oppression, he did not advocate for handouts or racial preferences. Instead, he preached self-sufficiency, personal responsibility, and competition based on ability. "The white man is not your father, he is not your mother. If you can't do for yourself, what are you going to do when the white man is gone?" Malcolm understood that black success could not come from government programs or charity, but from economic and intellectual strength. DEI, in many ways, contradicts this philosophy because it implies that black people need a structural advantage to succeed rather than relying on their own excellence. Malcolm X on economic strength over tokenism. You can't separate peace from freedom because no one can be at peace unless he has his freedom. A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. Malcolm warned against accepting symbolic victories, like token DEI hires, instead of real power, which comes from economic independence and ownership. Today's DEI programs often promote tokenism, putting black people in positions for optics rather than for their abilities. How this relates to DEI being rolled back. If Malcolm X were alive today, he would likely oppose DEI because it fosters dependence on white institutions rather than building black power from within. It does not challenge black people to compete and succeed on their own merits. It distracts from real power, economic and political control, by focusing on symbolic representation. James Brown, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. James Brown was not just a music icon, he was an outspoken advocate for black economic empowerment and believed in earning success rather than receiving it through race-based programs. James Brown on Hard Work Over Handouts, 1969. I don't want nobody to give me nothing, open up the door, I'll get it myself. This line from his song I Don't Want Nobody to Give Me Nothing perfectly sums up why DEI is misguided. It focuses on giving opportunities rather than ensuring fair access. Brown understood that real success comes from working for it, not from artificial handouts or racial quotas. How this relates to DEI. DEI is about giving opportunities based on race, rather than removing barriers so black people can earn them based on skill. Brown's message aligns with Booker T. Washington and Malcolm X. Black people don't need handouts, they need fair access to opportunity, and then they'll get it themselves. Louis Farrakhan, Black Empowerment Through Self-Sufficiency. Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, has long preached about economic self-reliance and black excellence, rather than depending on white institutions for progress. Farrakhan on Black Excellence Without White Validation, 2015. Why are we begging white people to do for us what we can and must do for ourselves? 1. This directly challenges the DEI mindset, which assumes black success requires institutional assistance. 2. Farrakhan, like Malcolm X, has argued that black people must control their own destiny through education, business, and community building, not through diversity programs controlled by others. Farrakhan's criticism of symbolic diversity. If the white man gives you something today, he can take it away tomorrow. 1. DEI programs create a false sense of security. They are not permanent, not earned, and not a foundation for true success. 2. Instead, he promotes independence, entrepreneurship, and competition based on skill, not racial preferences. Marcus Garvey, a race without power is a race without respect. Marcus Garvey was a major advocate for black independence and self-reliance, much like Malcolm X and Farrakhan. His ideas opposed DEI-style policies because he believed black people should succeed without relying on white approval or systems. Garvey on Building Black Excellence, 1921. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. 1. Garvey's message was clear. The strongest black people succeed because of their abilities, not because someone gave them an advantage. 2. DEI fosters dependency rather than self-confidence. How this relates to DEI. 1. DEI policies assume that black people need help to succeed. Garvey would call that an insult. 2. He argued for black-owned businesses, industries, and institutions so that success is earned, not given. Clarence Thomas, affirmative action hurts, not helps. Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, has been one of the biggest critics of race-based affirmative action and DEI. Clarence Thomas on Merit over Race, 2007. Government-sponsored racial discrimination based on benign motives is just as noxious as discrimination based on malicious ones. 1. Thomas believes any system that considers race, whether to help or harm, is still racism. 2. He has personally refused to identify as an affirmative action hire, believing it undermines black excellence. His argument against DEI. 1. It creates doubt about black achievements. If people believe you got in because of DEI, they don't respect your skills. 2. It discourages self-reliance. It fosters a victim mentality rather than encouraging black individuals to compete and win on merit. 3. It allows others to control the narrative. White-led institutions dictate who gets opportunities, rather than black people carving out their own paths. More historical evidence that DEI contradicts black excellence. W.E.B. Du Bois, The Talented Tenth and the Power of Merit. W.E.B. Du Bois was a strong advocate for black education and leadership, but he never supported racial preferences without merit. Instead, he believed in developing the most talented and capable black individuals to uplift the race. Du Bois on Excellence over Preference, 1903. The Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. The problem of education among Negroes must first deal with the talented tenth. It is the problem of developing the best of this race that they may guide the mass away from the contamination and death of the worst. 1. What this means, Du Bois believed that only the most talented, hard-working black individuals should rise, not those placed in positions just to fill a racial quota. 2. If DEI policies were around in his time, he likely would have criticized them for focusing on race rather than actual ability. How this relates to DEI. 1. DEI promotes unqualified individuals based on race, which undermines the talented 10th philosophy of fostering true black excellence. 2. Instead of ensuring that the best and brightest rise, DEI focuses on representation, even if it means putting less skilled people in important roles. 3. Du Bois would have argued that black professionals should earn leadership positions through skill, education, and competence, not through diversity quotas. Carter G. Woodson, Knowledge and Self-Reliance over White Validation. Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black History Month, strongly criticized black people depending on white institutions for success. His philosophy was based on education, skill, and self-reliance. Woodson on the Danger of Dependency, 1933. If you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. 1. Woodson understood that psychological dependence on white-led systems weakens black people. 2. DEI policies reinforce this dependence by making black professionals feel like they need racial assistance to succeed rather than their own capabilities. How this relates to DEI. 1. DEI makes black people think they need race-based programs to get ahead. 2. Woodson would argue that real power comes from mastering knowledge and skills, not from government-mandated diversity efforts. 3. The rollback of DEI isn't oppression, it's a chance for black professionals to prove they can succeed on their own. Zora Neale Hurston, No Handouts, No Victimhood. Zora Neale Hurston, one of the most influential black writers of the Harlem Renaissance, rejected the victim mentality and racial handouts. Hurston on Rejecting Victimhood, 1950s. I am not tragically colored. There is no great sorrow dammed up in my soul, nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. I do not belong to the sobbing school of Negrohood who hold that nature somehow has given them a low-down dirty deal. 1. Hurston refused to see blackness as a disadvantage, just as she would have refused DEI programs that assume black people need extra help to succeed. How this relates to DEI. 1. Hurston believed that talent, effort, and self-confidence define success, not race. 2. DEI promotes a sob story version of blackness, where black professionals are seen as needing extra help rather than being fully capable. 3. If Hurston were alive today, she would reject the idea that black people are victims in need of DEI programs. Benjamin Banneker, Excellence Without Assistance. Benjamin Banneker was a self-taught mathematician, astronomer, and surveyor in the 1700s, proving that black excellence existed even during slavery, without handouts. Banneker on Intelligence and Merit, 1791. The color of the skin is in no way connected with strength of the mind or intellectual powers. 1. Banneker's success came not because of racial policies, but because of his mastery of science and mathematics. 2. If he had been given opportunities just because of DEI, it would have disrespected his hard work and intelligence. How this relates to DEI. 1. DEI implies that black people cannot succeed without extra help. Banneker proves this is false. 2. His legacy shows that intellect and ability matter more than racial considerations. 3. If he could excel in the 1700s, why do black professionals today need DEI to prove themselves? Ida B. Wells, fighting for justice, not special treatment. Ida B. Wells was one of the strongest voices against lynching and racism, but she never argued for race-based handouts. She demanded justice and fairness. Wells on Justice Over Pity, 1895. The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. 1. She fought for equal justice under the law, not special treatment for black people. 2. Her approach focused on exposing racism and demanding fair treatment, not race-based advantages. How this relates to DEI. 1. Wells never asked for extra help for black people, she only wanted a fair system. 2. DEI contradicts her philosophy because it creates an unfair system where race is prioritized over merit. 3. If she were alive today, she would likely say, if we can compete fairly, we don't need DEI to give us anything. Why some black people are upset about ending DEI. The anger over the rollback of DEI comes from two main sources. People who benefited from DEI. Some individuals were given jobs, promotions, or college admissions because of DEI, not necessarily because of merit. 1. When that advantage is removed, they feel like something is being taken away. 2. Miseducation on black history. Many black Americans have been taught that racial preferences are necessary, rather than being told about historical black excellence that thrived without handouts. But here's the reality. 1. The strongest, most successful black Americans in history did not rely on racial handouts, they succeeded through grit, skill, and resilience. 2. The end of DEI is not a loss, it's a return to the original fight for equality that Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, and MLK fought for. The way forward. If we follow history, the best way forward for black Americans is not to fight for racial preferences but to focus on 1. Education and skill building, like Booker T. Washington taught, mastering trades, business, and academics is the key to success. 2. Entrepreneurship and economic strength, creating and owning businesses is more powerful than waiting for a company to hire you through DEI. 3. Personal excellence and merit, competing based on ability, not race, ensures true respect and recognition. 4. Self-reliance, not victimhood, as Soule and Douglas emphasized. Being dependent on race-based policies weakens us. The rollback of DEI is not a step backward, it's a step toward true equality based on merit and character, which is exactly what Black leaders originally fought for. The end of DEI is a step toward what Black leaders actually fought for. 1. Black excellence is real and does not need DEI to prove itself. 2. The most powerful Black leaders in history, Malcolm X, James Brown, Louis Farrakhan, Marcus Garvey, Clarence Thomas, preached self-reliance, character, and merit. 3. DEI was never the goal of the civil rights movement, it was an invention of modern politics that undermines true Black success. Success comes from skill, confidence, and competition, not from artificial advantages. The strongest Black leaders did not support DEI. When we look at history, it's clear that DEI is not the solution Black leaders fought for. Instead, they pushed for self-reliance, Malcolm X, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, merit and education, W.E.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Benjamin Banneker, economic and personal excellence, James Brown, Louis Farrakhan, Clarence Thomas, justice and fair treatment, not special privileges, Ida B. Wells, Zora Neale Hurston, Frederick Douglass. How this message can convince Black people today. 1. Show them real Black success stories that didn't rely on DEI. 2. Challenge the idea that DEI helps, it actually makes Black professionals look less competent. 3. Remind them that our ancestors didn't get help, they worked twice as hard and still proved themselves. 4. Point out that DEI creates a false sense of achievement, real respect comes from true skill and hard work. So if you don't know, now you know.